My name is Rob Cornerans. I'm the founder and CEO of Advanced Roofing and also Advanced Green Technologies, which was started in 2006. And now we're one of the largest solar rooftop companies and carport companies in the country. So I'm proud to say that we 40-year history in roofing. We also do air conditioning, lightning protection, but the solar is what we're talking about today. You're going to learn a lot about it. I have it on my houses. I think it's a great time with the tax incentive. And now I'm going to introduce Clint Sockman, Executive Vice President. Clint grew up in the construction industry, actually roofing in Ohio, and he started at 16, similar to when I started in roofing. And 18 years ago, we found his new home with Advanced Roofing here in South Florida. And then he was instrumental in getting Advanced Green and the solar off. He's responsible for overseeing the sales and operations of roofing and the solar projects, but mainly in the roofing. He carries his state of Florida general contracting solar licenses as well. So without any further ado, Clint, take it away.
Yep, thanks, Rob. Still got a lot of people filtering in. I think it's great to see. I think this might be our most well-attended webinar that we've ever had, and it says a lot about the excitement in the solar industry. So we're going to get started. We got a lot of ground to cover, and I hope to leave time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. So feel free to send any questions into the chat. We'll aggregate them and get them answered along the way. So today's learning topics and a little bit about Advanced Green before we get started there. We're a vertically integrated engineering, procurement, and construction contractor focused in the commercial and industrial sector of the renewable energy. Anything from carport solar, rooftop solar, ground mounts, battery energy storage. We have 7 offices in the state of Florida. And we really try to practice what we preach. We believe in energy efficiency and really try to put everything out there that we can. Still a lot of people joining in, so hopefully everybody gets here in time. Go ahead and keep moving. Learning objectives today. We're going to talk about the IRA a lot of exciting news as far as the taxes are concerned. Utility changes, one of the biggest driving forces in addition to the energy tax credits is the escalation of the utility rates. New technologies, grid-tied solar, battery backed up solar. Some of the risks and the perception of risk that's out there. Can solar panels withstand hurricanes? How will it produce over the lifetime, and how do you mitigate that through effective design? And then last, also understanding the financial model. All right, so a little introduction to PV and how they work. Our typical system is a grid-tied system. I would say this is roughly 95% of the solar that we put out there is grid-tied, something that we call utility interactive or net metered. That means it has the ability for us to not only use the energy into your building, but also to be able to send that back out to the grid and when you have excess and pull it back off anytime that you need. So we produce DC power on top of the rooftops. We convert that DC power to AC power where it's able to be either used by your building or if you have excess capacity, send it back out to the grid and then pull it back off when we need it. This is the majority of the systems that are installed out there in the commercial and industrial world are grid-tied solar systems. We also have hybrid systems, and this is something that is really coming into focus as the lithium battery market and storage market has matured. Costs have come down in batteries, and now we're talking a lot about energy storage, hybrid systems where we're able to not only produce energy that we can consume in our building, we can also store it and pull it back off at opportune times, whether that's to manage demand spikes through heavy utilization of industrial equipment, or the ability to offset and create a microgrid if there's a power outage, kind of replacing generators or work in conjunction with generators. As we move into talking about this, we're going to get into deployment of all of these types of systems and talk about the technologies that we're putting out there. Battery energy storage and microgrids, like we just talked about, really being fueled by the continual drive down of the cost of the lithium-ion storage units and the switch from our traditional utility partners to more demand-based billings. We're seeing utilities try to have a large move across the country to get away from kilowatt hour billings or energy billings and get more into demand-based billings. And the only way to manage demand is with storage. Obviously, you can effectively manage demand by how you load your system as well, and how you use your air conditioners or your anything that's consuming electric in your building. But demand, after you've done well managing your demand through usage, the only way to offset demand is through storage and being able to control your load and offset it. The microgrid systems are amazing. They're using centralized computer controllers to manage multiple energy sources. So right now, we're designing microgrid systems for the Seminole Tribe of Florida, and these systems have the ability to dispatch solar generation, utility generation, backup battery generators all in one time. And if anything should ever fail, something else can come in. And so we're really seeing this as an effective way to offset demand, provide resiliency in the event of power outages, and control costs. Keep moving. Next slide, please. We might be stuck. We get the next slide up. There we go. All right, moving on to rooftop solar. As Rob mentioned, advanced roofing, born in 1983, a heritage into the rooftop. Roofing is where we started when AGT was founded in 2005. Still continues to be a core market segment inside of our solar division. You know, the great thing about rooftop is it's obviously an underutilized asset in a real estate space that's easily been able to be adapted to hold solar. You see examples here of low slope metal roofing, steep slope metal roofing, flat roofing on TPO roofs. We really have engineered solutions for the ability to deploy solar on top of a rooftop anywhere, and really any type of rooftop roofing system that you want, and effective ways to integrate our flashings and to deploy solar. Rooftop solar continues to remain to be one of the most cost-effective and impactful ways for us to design CNI and distributed solar energy. From a cost perspective, it's low integration cost and very effective. One thing that we often get asked is, hey, can my roof support the weight of the solar array? And there's a new building code in place right now. The Florida Building Code allows us to get a full credit for the live load associated with the building design that really offsets almost the entire load of the solar array. So we really have eliminated the weight restriction problems that can come from engineering solars on rooftop. So rooftop continues to be a great way to deploy. Probably our fastest growing market segment, and something that we're the strongest in. AGT is one of the largest solar carport manufacturers and designers and installers in the Southeast United States. Is our carport and our parking garage solutions. They're fully customizable, can be deployed on top of parking garages, obviously surface mounted parking lots. But what we love about them is they can serve anything from just shade covering in a very industrial fashion, like our top left picture with galvanized steel, and really as bare bones as possible, all the way through our architectural solutions up on the top right, where you see split V columns, tube steel, powder coat finishes. So they're customizable to the user's needs. They can also be fully watertight and water managed to where we're collecting the rainwater through downspouts and drainage, or they can just be open to the air and be able to keep costs down by not including all of those types of water management systems. You see parking garage solar. These can be new parking garages or existing parking garages that we can integrate into and design into. We only want to make sure the earlier that we get involved in the design stage, if it's a new build, the better off we'll be. Moving into ground-mounted solar, we know that real estate is certainly a premium in Florida and our home market, but we do run into properties who have available real estate to put ground mounts on. Ground mounts are effective at scale for low cost integration. You can see some examples of how we deploy ground mounted solar here. Floating solar is one of the newest things into the marketplace, and obviously it opens up a market that has been, historically underutilized, which could be access to retention ponds, privately owned lakes and waterways. There's been a lot of research in the last couple of years about the sheer volume of what this market is available out there to put floating solar out. Now, it has some restrictions for common owned waterways, public waterways. There's a lot of red tape to navigate on permitting and access to those. But as you see here, this is a retention pond at Miami International Airport, top left. Some larger spillways and reservoirs have been developed around the country. Fort Bragg, I believe in North Carolina, is putting out a large array right now. And, when you talk about some of the benefits of this, obviously water is cooler. It keeps the solar cells more efficient. Oftentimes these aren't used for anything recreational, so it's underutilized space. We know Universal Studios has an array put into one of their ponds as well. Some neat thing here also is the branding. Obviously, you can see this signage, but solar is affording more people marketing opportunities and branding opportunities than ever before, whether that's through floating, whether that's through signage on top of our parking garages that can be put on solar arrays and still allow production, or surface deployed through our architectural solutions that we're going to talk about in a minute. Architectural solar is coming on quickly. We're seeing it integrated into a lot of projects, from city halls for covered pergolas like the top left, to just surface lotted mounted solar trees and solar flowers. The solar flower is a unique dual access tracking system. It has self collapsing technology if the winds crest over 40 miles an hour. And that solar flower on the top right is actually 16 feet tall, 16 feet in diameter. It's a significant, impactful visual reference to solar. Oftentimes, we'll have customers who have a megawatt, 2 megawatts on top of a roof that no one ever knows it exists past the initial ribbon cutting or an occasional press release. Architectural solar is a way for us to kind of bring the movement, the ESG, whatever motivation is behind these installations down to the ground level, to where your customers, your patrons can see what you're doing. Solar trees, solar flowers. I talked about the brandability and the marketability. The carport on the bottom right is obviously at an automotive dealership for Chevrolet. But as we start looking at retail opportunities, this could be branded marketing. It could be digital marketing attached to any of these projects. And so we're seeing this deployed often. Time for a quick poll. Will a grid-tied solar system provide backup power in the event of a power outage without batteries? Yeah, yes or no? Fifty-fifty split so far. We'll give it a couple of seconds to continue to come in. It's almost a dead heat. I think we probably have some pretty educated attendees here today, and this is a bit of a trick question. A true grid-tied solar system without any sort of microgrid controller or battery backup system actually cannot provide power in the event of an outage. So the UL listing requirements for our grid interactive inverters, our grid inverters, require that they actually shut down within a fraction of a second if they lose the utility grid reference that they're matched up to. And that's a safety requirement for life safety. But with the use of automatic transfer switches or motorized breakers in a battery bank, we can actually then create what we call a microgrid that isolates us from the utility grid. and we are able to provide that power. So it ended up being 52% no, 48% yes, and I could argue both ways. Pretty interesting results. I'm going to turn it over to Matt Jeffries, our Director of Sales and Strategic Accounts. Matt's going to talk a lot about the IRA changes, some of these tax benefits that are driving the solar industry forward where we're at today. Also, the utility escalation in our revenue model, which is super exciting as well. So, Matt, take it over.
Fantastic. Thanks, Clint, for the introduction. Matt Jeffries, Advanced Green Technologies, Director of Sales and Strategic Accounts. We're going to shift gears here a little bit and move into the financial aspects and some of the recent changes in both legislation with the local utilities and how those impact or should impact your financial returns. So I always kid around, in the commercial industry, we talk to probably over 100 commercial solar clients every year. And I can assure you, if you asked 1,000 clients, hey, is solar the right thing to do for the environment? You're going to get 900 and something responses that say, well, yeah, that's a dumb question, of course, right? Everybody seems to agree on that aspect. But if you ask the same question, is it also good for your balance sheet, the smart thing to do for your business? That's where you start to get a lot of confusion. You get a lot of I don't knows, or, hey, I looked at solar 5 years ago, it didn't make sense, or, is my roof going to leak? So we spend a lot of time focusing on educating clients on the financial side, just as much, and knowing that the environmental benefits come along with that as well. Next slide, please. So recent changes, 2022 was a big year for solar, arguably the biggest year in history. So starting on the federal side, the Inflation Reduction Act passed in August of last year, and the investment tax credit prior to that date was 26% and scheduled to sunset at 22% this year, 10% next year. With the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, that base investment tax credit is now 30%. That's a dollar for dollar offset on any tax liability. On top of that 30%, there's some bonus credits that you can also take advantage of. So there's a 10%, making a 40 total for the use of domestic content. There's also another 10% bonus for being located in an energy community. And there's a 10 to 20% bonus for qualified low-income projects. There's no dollar limit on the incentives that you can take advantage of. And this is a big one. A lot, prior to August of last year, a lot of non-taxable entities were on the sidelines. They couldn't take advantage of any of the tax equity because they were non-taxable. And with the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, they can now apply for what's called direct payment of the ITC, whether that's 30% up to possibly 70% of the total project value. The tax credit is also now transferable to a third party. So if you don't have the tax appetite to take that within your business, there is a resale market that's developing for that tax equity. And from what I'm hearing, it's starting out in the 93 to 96% range. So there's some real value in transferring those tax credits. In addition, Clint talked a little bit about battery storage. That technology now also qualifies for the ITC. There are some requirements. I'll talk a little bit about them, but any project that's over 1 megawatt AC, and just to put that into perspective, that's roughly $2.7 million. You do have to meet apprenticeship and prevailing wage requirements in order to get that 30%. Otherwise, it starts at 6%. So in addition to the ITC, the direct tax credit, solar investments also qualify for first-year accelerated depreciation. If the project's put into service in 2023, that's 80% depreciable in the first year, and in 2024, that becomes 60%. And that's a calculation we can help you make that's based on the client's effective tax rate. So if we move over to the state side, one major benefit that was actually at risk last year, and this is one of the big changes or big benefits, I guess, that took place in 2022 is net metering. So how net metering works, Clint talked a little bit about, about a grid-tied system. So think about, in your house, as your house as an example, you produce more power during the day than you need, and then you spin that meter in reverse. Then at night, you come back and you take that power. You're essentially using your grid as a battery system for no charge, right? It also works on a month-to-month ratio. So in a commercial property, let's say that January, February are big production months for you, but you're not consuming as much power as you are in, say, June, July, August. You can leave your meter in a negative state and take that power back in later months. So that was at risk this year in a utility-backed bill called House Bill 741, and DeSantis, our governor, vetoed that bill in April, protecting your right to net meter in the state of Florida. In Florida, solar investments also qualify for a sales tax exemption as well as a property tax exemption. So those are all good benefits that come together, and I'll show you some of the impacts on kind of a before and after perspective here in a few minutes. Moving on. So I put this together yesterday, actually. I just wanted to kind of show you, I mean, there's all these different credits and bonuses now, and I wanted to kind of show you what these looked like on a stacked basis. So on the left-hand side, you see, let's call this early last year, right? Pre-August. So it was a flat 26% ITC. That's it. And that was scheduled to decline, as I was mentioning earlier. Now, on the right-hand side, that 6% ITC is, again, for those big projects. That's the base tax credit for a project over 1 megawatt where you don't meet prevailing wage or the wage requirements. If the project's under 1 megawatt, you automatically start at a 30% ITC. And then you can see how there's this stacking aspect, right? So there's a 10% benefit for meeting that domestic content bonus, or for being in an energy community. Both of those are worth 10% each, right? And then that builds as you go up. So, up to potentially 70% can be returned to you in the form of tax equity if you check all these boxes. Two things to mention here as well. This doesn't include MACR's depreciation. So we talked about that benefit being separate. That sits on top of this potentially 70% tax credit. And the other thing to consider as a reminder is that direct pay also applies here. So if you're a non-taxable entity, you could take direct payment of this 30 to 70% tax credit and transferability as well. So you also have the option to sell it. Moving on. I just wanted to show you there, a lot of those bonus kickers that are out there, the plus 10%, the plus 20%, we're still waiting on Treasury guidance for the final requirements for those, but there are some maps. I mean, this has already been mapped out. So we already know where these energy communities are. They've already been defined, and there's some opportunity in Florida. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on these, but I just want to show you that, there is data out there supporting, these sites that qualify for those bonus credits. Moving on. Same thing with this slide, and I've got the link at the bottom. We can share that with you in the chat, or you can request a copy of this presentation if you'd like. But this is for the low income communities map. So this is through the New Markets Tax Credit mapping tool. You can identify where these low income communities are. So it's a plus 10% adder if you're just in one of these low income communities as they're mapped on here. It can be plus 20 if you meet certain requirements, and those requirements being that it has to be a low-income residential building project or an economic benefit project, and has to meet certain financing criteria as well. One thing I want to mention on the low income, this isn't allocated credit, so there is an application and award process that's relevant here. You don't just automatically qualify and have the ability to take advantage of that tax credit. So, and that application and award process, again, we're waiting on Treasury guidance, final Treasury guidance, but that is in the process of being developed. Moving on. And this is the domestic content. So as the IRA, the legislation is written right now, the requirements are 100% American iron and steel, which is actually relatively easy, and 40% of assembled domestic, 40% of assembled components need to also be meet domestic content requirements. That's a little bit more difficult. One thing I will mention on this is all of our carport products are 100% American iron and steel. And the steel portion of that project is so substantial that we believe moving forward, all of our carport projects will qualify for that 40% domestic content, or the 30% plus the 10% adder for domestic content. We're still waiting final Treasury guidance on this as well. It's expected late Q2, early Q3 of this year. So moving on. So the Opex Squeeze, this is a very relevant, this is a critical slide. I think if you remember one out of this entire deck, 2022 was a devastating year for our utilities. We all know firsthand what happened in the fuel market last year, and the utilities tried as hard as they could to pass through those costs as they were, getting those increases. I mean, if you think about the state of Florida, we're highly dependent, or our power costs are highly dependent on fuel-based power. So while they were able to pass through increases on the fuel side as fast as they could, the market fluctuated so fast they weren't able to pass through enough. On top of that, we had 2 hurricanes that hit the market, and all the utilities suffered, devastating infrastructure losses. So they're planning catch-up escalation in 2023. You can read these articles, you can see the dates on them. They're all late 2022, early 23. They're planning to pass through additional escalation in 2023 to catch up from those losses. Now, on the left-hand side of the slide, this is the last 13 months, and this is just base rates. So this is outside of fuel-based, fluctuation. This is just base rates. And I selected this one schedule just because general services with demand is the most common schedule for anybody that's on this call in a commercial environment. So, what's interesting about this is, this is a 13-month period. So call it December of 21 through January of 2023, right? Look at these increases at the bottom. I always call this, or refer to this as the silent killer, because when I talk to clients about this, they're like, big deal. I was paying 2.2 cents a kilowatt hour. Now I'm paying 2.8 cents. It's still insignificant. Like, why do I care? Until you look at it on a percentage basis, right? So that's a compounded 30% increase. So just to put that into perspective, if you're paying a $65,000 annual power bill, that's a $20,000 annual Opex headwind. Forget about the fuel and infrastructure recovery and all of that for 2023, right? That just slipped through as, 0.6 of a cent per kilowatt hour and a little bit of a base rate increase. So you just got to keep an eye on this. And this is improving the dynamics of solar, because as you're producing your own power at a fixed cost at your location, you're not exposed to this escalation otherwise through your utility. Moving on. And these are the financial impacts combined. So if you are a non-taxable facility, on the left-hand side, this is a cash flow chart. You're probably used to seeing these 8+ year paybacks. You were largely on the sidelines in the past saying, hey, solar's tough. I can't live with a 10-year return on investment. And things have changed. So if you look over to the right, 2 things. Look at the first year of electric power bill for this facility. This is a hospital in Gainesville. So they were paying $110,000 a year, or they are paying $110,000 a year in power 13 months ago. And today that's $144,000. So that's one big gain, because if you offset that power with solar, you're not paying that $30,000 incremental cost. On top of that, you have now the ability to take direct payment of that 30% tax credit. So in this analysis, or in this model, I'm not using the plus 10% or the 70%. I'm just using the 30% base tax credit here. This project's under a megawatt. And you can see the payback fell from 8.3 years to 4.7 years. I always like to also highlight the 25-year line, because that's the warranty period of a new solar system. So you're also talking about not just a 4.7-year payback, but you're talking about $4.6 million in free cash flow, which makes a big impact on any business. Let's move on and talk about taxable facilities. So taxable facilities, you guys already had a pretty sweet deal last year, right? It only gets better, but you were already able to take, last year was 100% accelerated depreciation. Now it's 80. That's a little bit of a ding. You can see the same escalation. So the 110,000 to the 144,000. But now the tax credit goes up from 26% to 30%, and that huge 30% escalation obviously helped the financial model. So here we're looking at roughly a year impact on returns. This can be better. It's obviously radically better if we can stack some of those plus 10% adders on there for domestic content, low income, et cetera. Moving on. This is kind of two things on this slide that I want to share. On the left-hand side, these are, standard paybacks on what you should expect based on the IRA changes and the escalation that took place last year. So you're looking at 2 to 5 years on a standard flat roof with scale. And solar carports, those largely vary by size, by the scale of the project. So in that megawatt plus range, you're going to be 5 to 7 years. On the smaller projects, there's just so much structural steel, you're going to see an extended payback. One thing I want to explain on the right, and I'll tell a little story, and this is a true story about a manufacturer in Orlando. So manufacturer in Orlando calls us. We're obviously the largest commercial roofing contractor in the state of Florida as well. Client calls us and says, hey, my roof got problems. Please come out, take a look at it. We look at it. We say, hey, you probably already know this, but this roof's 30 years old. It's failing. Here's your quote for a new roof. It's $841,000. What do you think about that, right? And, the reaction is $841,000. I didn't know a roof cost that much. That's not in my Opex budget. What am I going to do here? And, then the conversation moves to, okay, hear me out. You're going to think I'm crazy, but what if we put $2.3 million worth of solar on that new roof? And now the client's saying, okay, so you're telling me I need $3 million bucks. 841 was a big number. Now I need $3 million. Until you look at the cash flow chart, right? So that incremental $2.3 million comes back in year 5, right? And then let's fast forward down to year 10, where we've now recovered the full value of the roof as well, right? So it's kind of a no-brainer. I really think if you take one thing away from here, if you're re-roofing, you should be looking at solar in combination with that re-roofing project. Keep in mind, both assets, the roof and the solar, come with a 25-year warranty. So you have that warranty alignment. So not only do you cover that 841 that would have otherwise been a sunk capital expense, you're also freeing up $4.5 million worth of cash flow during the combined warranty period of those assets. So this is really important. This is one of the no-brainers. If you're in this scenario where you're replacing a roof, this is a no-brainer. And I'll show you another no-brainer in a minute. Let's move on. This is it, actually. So I call this the revenue model or the parking model, right? So if you're looking at this is an actual rendering of a carport at a beach, a municipal-owned beach lot, right? So the theory here is, hey, you're producing solar you're producing power with the solar on top of the carports. But what if you were also able to charge an incremental premium for the shade coverage, right? When you're driving down to the beach, you're already pulling out your phone, you're paying $3 an hour. Would you pay $3.25? Would you pay $3.50 to park your car in the sun and out of the elements? I think the answer is obviously yes, right? You'll be shocked. In this scenario, we did, we analyzed all of their hourly parking. So, how many hours per spot, in this entire lot. We're covering 321 parking spots. The incremental cost required to completely cover this investment, make it cash flow neutral, was 20 cents, right? So you're paying $3 now, you pay $3.20. This project costs you $0 as a municipal government agency. So keep that in mind. Also, this applies equally well to multifamily. So apartments, condos. I know we've got a lot of those folks on this call. We should talk about this. We've got a project underway right now. The sweet spot seems to be $40 to $60. If you can charge $40 to $60 a month to park underneath these solar canopies, and then feed that power into your house loads that you're paying the bill on as a property manager, that's gonna get you a really nice return in the, say, 3 to 5 year range. So, and then self-storage as well. If you look at, back up one, if you could real quick, sorry. Yeah, if you look at the cash flow on the bottom right, this is a self-storage facility. So, in this scenario, they're parking RVs, and the monthly rental income, $63,000 a month. Look how that dwarfs the energy savings of $32,000 a month, right? So return on investment here in that scenario, 3-4 years, phenomenal. Also applies to private applications, VIP, premier parking, anywhere where you can create some revenue for the value of parking underneath these beautiful structures. Next slide, please. So I just wanted, we highlighted this slide last year and we've updated it a little bit, but I just wanted to share with you how easy it is to do just a high level evaluation of whether a project might make sense for you or not. This is something you're more than welcome to call us. We'll help you do it on the phone. But this is some of the information we need. This is all the information we need. We need your site address. We need 12 months of power bills. We need your corporate tax structure for depreciation calculations. So you can see, and there's some tricks of the trade on the bottom. You can convert from kilowatt hours annually, which are on your bill, over to the amount of solar you would need in DCKW by dividing by 1.5 or multiplying by 1.5, vice versa. And if you're taking notes, the clean rooftop capacity, you can expect about 10 watts per square foot out of your roof surface. So on the right-hand side, you can see all we've done here is we've measured out the roof on Google Earth. It's 45,000 square feet. We multiply that by 10 watts per square foot. We're talking about a 454 kW solar system at $2 a watt, and we can provide you those budget numbers. That's about $900,000. If I take that 454 watts DC and multiply it by 1.5, there's my annual production at 681,000 kilowatt hours per year. So all I wanted to show here is there's some real easy math. We can look at this even in 5 minutes on the phone and say, hey, you're probably looking at about a 6-year payback. How does that sound? And if it sounds good, then we're going to do a site visit. We're going to evaluate your electrical system. We're going to do a much more deep dive and put together a full financial model for you, to ensure that your returns are accurate. Moving on. Time for a poll. What is the current investment tax credit, the ITC? And this is the base percentage, not all the other goodies that go on top of that. All right, this one was an easy one. I think we've talked about it enough, but we've got about 70 responses, 80 responses so far, and it's heavily in favor of 30%. And you're correct, that is the base tax credit for 2023, and actually the next 10 years. So, next slide. Real quick, moving into kind of design capabilities. So I just want to highlight, we not only do we self-perform all of the construction associated with carport, rooftop, or ground mount installations, we also self-perform all designs. So we have a complete in-house design staff consisting of 2 PEs, a couple double E's, 4 NABCEP certified solar installers and designers. We also have an electrical AC license in the state of Florida, which allows us to handle all the work past the inverters, so all of the interconnection work in-house. And we mentioned we're a licensed roofing contractor, which we think is very important. You certainly don't want to risk your roof warranty by installing solar on it. So full foundation design, all structural, electrical designs. That said, if we're working on a new construction project with a third-party design team, we have no problem doing hand-in-hand coordination or even delegated design on these. So if you look on the right-hand side, this is an actual attachment detail for a project in West Palm Beach, which is 169-mile-an-hour wind class zone. You have 4 total arrays. You can see on the bottom right, each array is roughly 95 solar panels. And for each array, you're only talking about 2 mechanical attachments. So when people are talking about how many holes are you going to drill in my roof? Is my roof going to leak? Is this going to blow off? This is designed to the same, ASCE 716 wind loading requirements that your roof is attached to. So there's not a real scenario under 169 where your roof stays and the solar goes. Technically, from an engineering perspective, at 180, they both go. Move on to the next slide. More on roof failure. So, we get this question all the time, is my roof going to leak? And it's really a trick question. On the left-hand side, this is a law firm installed by another solar contractor. You can see that detail, in the top right corner there. So they drilled 463 holes into this roof and dropped, anchors and threaded rod into there. And that was their attachment detail. So, how that passed code, I don't know. Did this roof leak? It absolutely leaked. We ended up replacing the roof. We had to repair spalling deck. And ironically, the law firm elected to have us reinstall solar. So, just confidence in design. On the right-hand side, also in the red box, is this roof going to leak? The answer is no, it's not going to leak. There's not a single penetration in this roof. It's literally glued or foamed to the roof. So I don't know how they pulled or closed out a permit on this design, but same thing, that's not designed to 169. The bottom line is here on the right, you see proper attachments, which we are required to use by the roofing manufacturers. And when you use these attachments, you have no warranty risk. Next slide, please. And just real quick on survivability, we obviously just had Hurricane Ian impact the west coast of Florida, a few months back. These are two jobs, one in Fort Myers, the other in Cape Coral. Both took a direct hit, both with 170 mile an hour sustained winds, both big jobs, right? So one's over a megawatt rooftop installation. The other one's a carport plus a rooftop installation. The bottom line here is minimal losses, right? So less than 1% on both. The carport withstood the hurricane. Again, look at those trees. There's nothing left on them without a single loss of any module. On the J.J. Taylor project on the left, you'll see, that corner, right? You can see we lost about 40 panels in that corner. If there's any engineers on this call, that's where the pressures are the highest, right? So that's exactly where you would expect to have minimal loss. So just wanted to kind of show we've got a lot of really great detail information, unfortunately, as an outcome of those recent hurricanes. Moving on. Time for, I think, one last poll. If you were performing your own high-level feasibility analysis, or if you called us, how many DC watts of solar would we tell you you're probably going to get out of each square foot of roof space? Obviously, I made that point pretty clear. So this one's over 80% of respondents are saying 10, and that's the correct answer. It's not a steadfast rule. It could be 12, it could be 16, but that's a great starting spot, and that does take into account normal mechanical conflict on a roof surface. Moving on. My cell phone number's on here. Clint's cell phone number's on here. Our emails are on here. Please take note. Reach out to us. Just mattj@agt.com, clintS@agt.com. More than happy to help anybody on this call, even if it's just hey, I'm kicking around an idea. Those are great calls. We can get you pointed in the right direction. I'm going to hand it over to Kevin Cornarens. Kevin's our executive vice president on the roofing side for Advanced Roofing, and he's going to close us out here with just a few more slides. Thank you.
Great information. Take note Matt's email as well. If you want a copy of the slides, I could email him, mattj@agt.com. We could get you the presentation over. Also, we have, if you're in Florida in the Orlando area, we'd love to see you as well. Having a little celebrating 40 years as an advanced group company. So I'd love to see you. If you'd like an invite to that as well, you could let Matt know. And we could get you invited to that. So it'd be great to see you. All senior leadership would be there. And then wanted to highlight on the next slide the upcoming webinars as well. Again, a lot of things going on the rooftop, especially if you're looking at solar or other HVAC, what you need to do to protect your vendors and your employees with rooftop safety. If you're a current client, how to maximize budgeting and with our software, our roofing software. And then also just before hurricane season, what you need to be prepared for hurricane season with solar, HVAC, and roofing. So a lot of good tips there, some free giveaways. So we do have some great questions lined up as well that I wanted to get to Matt and Clint to see if we get them. We have about 15 minutes here, so we'll work through some of these. First one, can you provide some information on vertical panels? We have 2 buildings in the middle of Washington, D.C. with very limited roof surface, and horizontal panels will not work. Any
Yeah,
experience there?
that's a great question, and there are some products coming to market that can actually serve the need that you're looking for. One company, LMX, is making one. It's a curtain wall product that goes up. It's LMX. I'll throw a link to their website or their brochure into the chat for anybody who's looking for it. But yeah, I mean, we've seen people mount traditional solar panels on vertical surfaces. But I think the next evolution is really more along the lines of curtain wall installations, where solar panel, where the structure itself and the paneling much more architectural and clean. LMX is a company that's out there that we're working with on some projects in Florida. So you also have solar glass that's translucent. That they're creating glass curtain walls as well. So you can take a look at that. Onyx Solar is the one that comes to mind for vertical translucent glass curtain wall solar, and then LMX is the metal paneling.
Thanks for that info. Jumping back to, you said the logos, on the floating solar systems. Does the signage on the solar panels reduce the efficiency of the collection?
It does. So the actual specific example on the floating solar array, those are not even solar panels. Those are blanks with signage that are held. Now, we do have the skins that can go over to where you can still have production out of those modules. And it varies based on the shade of what you're putting down, but it's somewhere around a 20% reduction in the efficiency of the panel that you're laminating on when you put a skin on. So you have 2 different things. We can skin existing solar panels, or we can actually just blank them off and create signage and logos by blank space. And it's really just, oftentimes how much space you maybe have and what's most cost effective.
Jumping to after they're installed, what are the maintenance requirements for any of the solar systems you talked about? What would be the cost associated with the maintenance for budgeting?
It's a good question. It varies immensely. I mean, I think the cost, I should say, varies immensely based on scale and the type of deployment. Elevated parking garages and surface mounted parking lots require more equipment to properly maintain. So those costs tend to be a little bit higher than ground mount. A 10 kW from a scale perspective is obviously more to mobilize than a megawatt from a per watt. So price is hard to nail down. At a bare minimum, all of our systems are typically monitored remotely, whether the owner's monitoring that or they hire someone like AGT in our monitoring service to monitor productivity. Our primary guard for production is through remote monitoring through our inverters. We're looking for things like production anomalies, inverters going offline, lower than expected production when we kind of analyze expected versus predicted or actual versus predicted energy production. And then at a minimum once a year, we recommend that we get in and we take thermal pictures of our terminations and of our breakers. We're physically looking for signs of corrosion. We're checking our torque settings on all of our fasteners. That's one detail. Every single bolt is torqued to specification with calibrated machinery and then marked, so we have a reference point of how it was put down. And so, those visual inspections are key. We recommend that at a minimum when that happens once a year. Obviously, if there's a high wind event or something that happens, we would like to get there immediately after that as well. So timing can be key. So that's the lowdown on operations and maintenance.
Typically start maintenance year one, right?
Yeah,
Year one.
obviously the maintenance demand is lower in the first several years than it is at the end of the life, but you never can tell when something should happen, right? When somebody maintaining an HVAC unit damages something, and having visibility into that is key to your health checkups. So we recommend a year one.
Excellent. I had a question a little early on about domestic content, and could you explain that in a minute or so of what that means?
I think Matt hit it pretty well, and it's specifically around manufactured domestic content, and that's key. We're still waiting on Treasury guidance to nail down exactly what domestic content means, but historically it's meant that the significant transformation of the base material has to happen here in America. And so for solar panels, for example, that is when we take silica and turn it into either monocrystalline solar cells or polysilicon solar cells. And no one right now is manufacturing solar cells and turning silica into polysilicon or monosilicon in the United States. So we are under the assumption right now, waiting Treasury guidance, that there is not a single solar panel that's truly made in America, other than maybe First Solar, which is a non-traditional, non-silicon type solar panel. So they have to be manufactured in America, not just assembled. A lot of people assemble solar panels in the United States made out of products that are maybe manufactured in other countries, and we just put them together to make a piece. That is not manufactured. So you got to really watch that. But Matt explained how this works. Right now, 40% of the cost of the manufactured goods have to be manufactured in the United States. And that is consistently ramping up, which is part of the IRA to drive domestic manufacturing to higher percentages every year, 40 to 50 to 60. OHIO. I don't know who I got, but somebody maybe either knows I'm an Ohio guy or knows that First Solar is based in Ohio, but both are true.
Hey, one thing I'd add, Clint, on that right now. You mentioned that we're awaiting IRA guidance. So as the legislation's written right now on domestic content, there are two exceptions, right? One is if the domestic content adds a 25% increase over non-domestic content, you can use the non-domestic and count it as domestic. The other is insufficient supply. So as Clint mentioned, there isn't any supply right now, is what we believe. So there's a clear path, as the legislation's written right now, to 40% for everyone. But is that really going to happen? We don't think so, right? I mean, they're going to require some domestic products. So we do expect guidance. It's going to clear that up later in the second quarter.
Yeah, and also forward looking, and we're following this, at a very high level with all of our manufacturing partners. We're not expecting a significant supply of domestic manufactured solar panels in the U.S. until late 2024, early 2025 at the very earliest. We're in negotiations with Hanwha Qcells, Jinko, Canadian Solar directly every day. And that's the guidance that they're giving us. It's also the industry level guidance that we see coming out of SEIA, Solar Energy Industries Associations, Solar Power World, the publications. So we're really thinking 2025 until we see a significant supply of domestic content. And even at that point, we don't know if it'll be enough to serve all of the needs and the demand here in the market. So it'd be interesting to see how it plays out. I did want to address, I think somebody had asked about condo associations as well. I saw a crowd response that said they could take it. I would be very careful with that. I'm going to refer back to what I said earlier, which is the IRA, and we're waiting on Treasury final guidance. But all indication from industry professionals is homeowner associations and condo associations will not be able to take that tax credit under direct pay. This will be higher education, municipal government agencies, churches, some other people. But if you file a corporate tax report most likely, which condo associations and homeowner associations do. The indication from tax professionals in the industry is they do not expect property associations and homeowner associations to be able to take direct payment. But final Treasury guidance still to be coming, expected second quarter. So
Thanks, Glenn, for clarifying that. Another question related to rooftop. What low slope roof systems are you currently recommending to match the 25-year PV output? So what type of roof systems, glass membrane, are you recommending?
is that our friend Boris by any chance?
It is.
Yeah, we absolutely do our best, and we're looking for high performance roof systems when we have a customer who is really looking for alignment. That could be enhanced thicknesses, whether it's 80 mil TPO, it could be a 60 mil PVC key with a higher performance formulation in the membrane itself. But the roofing industry has pivoted to the availability of 25 and 30-year warranties, and that's it's really through enhanced detailing and enhanced membrane specifications. They're out there. I will say this too. A well-maintained 20-year roof could easily last you 20, 25 years, 30 years. So that maintenance concept is a big deal. Being preventative about your maintenance can take an asset much further than its warranty period. Warranty, we say this all the time if you've watched previous webinars, a warranty doesn't necessarily equate to a life cycle, a lifespan. We can have a 30-year roof never maintained that fails in 20 years, and we can have a 20-year roof properly maintained that gives you 25. That is an absolute reality. So maintenance is key.
And then how do you think it affects insurance policies with new solar systems, either rooftop or carport?
Yeah, that's a big topic in the residential world. We know right now there's a big squeeze on residential homeowners from the cancellation of policies or not renewing policies. We haven't seen it so much in the commercial market space, but we are seeing FM Global drive a lot of solar standards from a design and installation standpoint, a lot of scrutiny on the mechanical attachments, not necessarily raising rates, but really driving intelligent design. FM really, in our opinion, leads the way in the insurance market, and the standards that they kind of roll out will typically make their way to all other carriers. So it's a good question.
So I'm gonna take one more question and then we'll close it up. And if you have any other follow-ups, or if we didn't get to it, Matt's the best resource. Going back to the bonus depreciation, is that calculated net of the TAC credit or original cost?
50% of the ITC is discounted. From the base price. So if let's just say the base case is a 30% ITC, you would have to discount your depreciable base by 15% of the purchase price, which is half of that 30% tax credit. Let's just say in theory, we were buying $1 million solar array. We were getting a 30% tax credit. Half of that is 15%. So your depreciable basis now becomes 85% of your purchase price. In the $1 million analogy, 850,000 is what you would be depreciating. 80% year one, the remaining 20 over the next 5.
Thanks for clarifying that. But one last one come in. Are there any grant opportunities for school districts?
Heavily dependent by market. In Florida, no, we don't have grants now. Doesn't mean they can't apply for something through the DOE or the Department of Education that we don't know about. That's something that our team and the analysts would research by marketplace. But in Florida, no. But that direct payment is still very much available to public and higher education, private education. So that direct payment of the 30% base or anything that could be stacked on it is what would be available at the federal level.
Excellent. Well, Matt and Clint, it's very informative. Appreciate everyone joining today. It would be great to see you. If you have more questions, we'll see you in person in Orlando. Reach out to Matt. If not, everyone have a good rest of the week. Hopefully, it's sunny and bright.